Hey guys, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you can see and hear me well. I hope you are doing well, of course, in these strange times. So today's subject was, as in the title, self-esteem. There is some delay I can see in the preview, but hopefully it's working. It's gonna work actually. All right. So self-esteem. I thought that we're gonna start by breaking down the concept because self-esteem is a very broad idea, very broad concept we might be having. Some people associate it with confidence or self-efficacy. Some people might associate it with self-worth, or basically feeling secure and feeling right about doing good things for ourselves in a sense. So again, the first question as usual, the first question would be, what do you associate the self-esteem with? So as I was saying, for me, it's confidence, is feeling good about ourselves, feeling secure, having the self-efficacy that we know what we're doing, we know where we're going, and know that what we want in a sense. I think on a very basic level, self-esteem is about doing what is good for us. So focusing on what is good for us, choosing things in our lives that are good for us. Obviously, it's not about doing things that are against ourselves or against our nature, against our values, but there's this connection, I think, between having self-esteem and doing the right thing, doing things that are good for us. So in contrast, we know that having low self-esteem for many people, and I'm wondering what your situation is like, if you're comfortable with sharing, that's going to help us to brainstorm more ideas. In contrast to what I was saying, low self-esteem is often associated with, low confidence or feeling insecure. I wonder how it is for you guys. What sort of things do you experience that you think are in regards to this low self-esteem? So when we have that low self-esteem, I think it's quite common to experience the symptoms of like self-criticism, or feeling worthless, feeling like we don't like ourselves, feeling that maybe whatever we do is not, is not very right, not very good for us, right? So we can see here this contrast between doing and choosing things that are good for us and doing and choosing things that are not very good for us. So where we blame ourselves, when we feel maybe internal conflict. And I can see here that I'm not really getting many messages in the chat, which is fine because it's a very difficult subject, right? Who wants to talk about the low self-esteem, right? It's associated with probably embarrassment, shame, or anxiety, or anger. Depends on how you react to this feelings actually, right? Because on the fundamental level, even if we can change the internal dialogue, even if we can, tell ourselves that, all right, you are good, or it's good to feel good about yourself, it's not gonna change the underlying feelings. So we can see here also that it kind of leads us to this idea of self-evaluation. So self-esteem leads us to maybe experience all these challenging feelings where we feel like we don't deserve something, where we feel embarrassed to connect with other people, or where we feel like, there's something wrong with us. There's something wrong with us on this fundamental level, so that no matter what we do, it's pointless or maybe wrong, or we can expect some punishment, or, being ridiculed by other people. So there's this strong component of negative self-evaluation and self-criticism where we, not only feel a little bit insecure in certain situations or in new situations, but we also make it more difficult for ourselves, where we start criticizing ourselves that it's wrong to feel in some particular way. So I'm just going to read some comments. Not knowing enough about who you are to begin with. So that would be associated with lower self-esteem. So, right, so having self-knowledge, having more self-awareness, understanding ourselves can be associated with self-esteem. Well, I'm going to actually get to this subject in a minute. Early childhood trauma takes a long time to heal. Yep. Being unworthy in the eyes of the opposite sex. Yeah. That one is interesting from Ibrahim. It is as if our face Godzilla. It is armored. It's huge, like 400 meters, and shoots laser beams. Right. So I really like this metaphor because it illustrates how deeply it can run and how much influence it can have over our actions if we have that side of ourselves that perhaps is insecure or is very critical towards ourselves. Having less accomplishment than peers, right? Lower self-esteem. So we see here that we can break it down into several components. There is the component in terms of accomplishment. So when we are not doing something that is good for us, that's right for us, something that matters to us, that we value, we're not going to feel really good about ourselves, right? So that often maybe leads to feelings like maybe even disgust or anger or anxiety or frustration. It really depends on the person. In my experience, I remember years ago I was really struggling with self-esteem, and it still comes back really. Like I'm not really immune to it, and I really see it as a part of human condition because there are situations that I face in my life which are new to me, like even during these live streams. This is a huge step for me outside of my comfort zone, and although I am a little bit better with that and it's getting easier for me more, and I feel more comfortable, but on the beginning especially, the first 2-3 live streams, it was an absolute mess. Really stressed out, really nervous. I didn't feel right. After the live stream, I started very often I would blame myself, like, oh, I should have done this, I should have done that. But that kind of reminded me what I'm working on, what am I working towards. So all these judgments, all this self-criticism are not really going to help me as much, right? Like they're not really going to help me improve my live stream, because in the future, what am I going to do is I'm going to be scared to do these live streams in the first place. So I don't experience these emotions of, guilt or embarrassment or insecurity. So as I was saying, that having this insecurity about certain things is a normal part of human life. And I believe that nobody is really immune from this. And in fact, if we didn't experience that, we wouldn't know when we are getting outside of our comfort zone. So just to go back, because I got sidetracked, several components to self-esteem, which is this self-evaluation, self-criticism perhaps, self-judgment, which leads us to experience particular feelings. And of course, there is this part of seeing the results of our actions. So whether we're doing something that is good for us or right for us, or something that we value, right? And also, I think self-esteem is connected to this idea of having a feeling that we are worthy of having good things in our lives, feeling worthy of getting what we want in life, right? So I think it's kind of connected with self-efficacy. And self-efficacy, for those of you who are not aware of, is this concept that we have the belief that we are capable of doing something. So for example, my self-efficacy on the beginning, when I first started with this live stream, my self-efficacy was really low. Like during my first live stream, had no idea what I'm doing. I was super stressed out. It was really chaotic. It was from some perspective, it was a disaster for me. But as I started doing these live streams, and it's kind of applicable to any kind of skill, anything that we approach in life, the more I do it, the more my self-efficacy goes up. So that's how I start to feel, more relaxed, more comfortable. And this concept of self-efficacy applies to anything really in life, anything that we approach, be it talking to other person, or learning new skill, or moving to another country perhaps, anything that pushes us outside of our comfort zone. I think that's the most important. So I think this self-efficacy concept is super important and very related to the self-esteem, because when your self-esteem is low, your self-efficacy will be also low. I mean, objectively, you might be able to do certain things, you might have this particular skill, you might have good skills even, right? But you're not going to be really acknowledging the success or accomplishment, because you are feeling unworthy, that because your self-esteem is low, right? So self-esteem is really connected to this idea of judgment and acknowledgement of what our values are, what our worth is, what our skills are, and what we are really capable of. And then there was an earthquake, right? That was kind of interesting, yeah. Alright, I see some discussions going on, so I'm not gonna distract you guys. So if we started breaking it down into all these different components, and obviously we can see a huge distinction between high self-esteem and low self-esteem. But also, before moving forward, I thought it's also going to be worth to mention that someone can have overly developed self-esteem. And I think there is that risk of kind of inflated ego, where we take credit for things which we haven't really achieved, or take a note of our skills that we don't really have, or overestimate our abilities. So I think there's also that risk of going astray with the unrealistic idea of who we are, what we are entitled to, what we can do, right? And what our worth is. So that there needs to be a kind of balance between these two extremes of where we feel completely worthless and where we assume that we are godlike and we can achieve anything we want. So I think this is something to consider as well. But in this live stream, I'm not really going to be talking about this extreme state of super high self-esteem, because I believe that this kind of state is usually present with certain personality disorders, or simply personality kind of tendencies towards narcissism and kind of egocentrism and selfishness, perhaps, in this sort of area that I'm not really covering my channel. So I'm going to focus on this more balanced form of a self-esteem, and also this scenarios where the self-esteem is low. So we broke it down into different components, and I think that for someone who has a low self-esteem, the first thing that we can do, right, the first thing that you can do when you want to start working towards this self-esteem, so kind of start climbing up on the ladder of self-esteem, is to develop self-awareness and start taking care of yourself. Because as we can see here, as I was saying, the self-esteem is about doing what is right for us, doing the right thing, right? Fundamentally, it's about this worth and values, and doing things that, push us towards growth, perhaps, or are simply, good for our health, psychological health and physical health. So I think the first thing that the person with low self-esteem needs to do is to start taking care of themselves. But in order to do that, you need to have sufficient self-awareness, because how else will you know what's right for you, right? How else will you know what sort of needs you have? So we know that there are physical, psychological needs, right? We know there are certain things that are wrong for us, there are certain things that are good for us. And I was wondering, how do you guys know what your needs are? How do you go about meeting your psychological or emotional needs? Is it like something arises and you just go and do it? Is it something about maybe looking for help in other people? Or maybe something in regards to completely ignoring the need? So while I'm waiting for your answers and what your attitude towards this concept is, I'm just going to briefly explain what the needs are. So we have this physiological needs. So obviously we have food, and we have a need for food, we have a need for water and stuff like that. We also have a need for feeling safe, and generally taking care of our health, which the more you start doing it, the more complex it becomes. Although fundamentally I think it's very simple, but humanity kind of got lost in the whole process. So we have all these physiological needs, obviously, but then as we progress on this kind of pathway of abstraction, so the more abstract we get, the more emotional, psychological we get, the more complex our needs are. So we know that we have needs for relationships, right? We want to connect with other people, we want to touch other people, we want to get hugs, right? We want to get intimate and stuff like that. So that can even get even more complex. And then we have this needs for self-esteem and self-value. So what it means is that we want to feel respected by other people, we want to be recognized for our accomplishment. But on this hierarchy of need, actually self-esteem is not exactly what I've been talking about here today. It's just a very limited concept, I think, that focuses on external achievement. It places a lot of emphasis on this external achievement, but I think self-esteem is more something that we have inside, something that if we actually make it dependable on external achievement, it's going to be a very fragile thing, right? I think that self-esteem would be better if we base it on tangible things and something that we have within us, because external achievements, they're going to come and go, right? Our reputation is going to come and go, but our own worth, our own values, our own self-respect is something that belongs to us, something that we can control actually. So that's something to consider as well. So Trement says, would your needs be alluded to when the things you participate in feel empty and unfulfilling? So that's a good question. I'm not sure if I understood it though. So the way I could interpret it is that you try to fulfill your needs, you do things that you think should fulfill your needs, but they're not feeling satisfying, or they're not feeling like you satisfied your needs. So that would be one option. Or does it mean that you do different things, but they're not really satisfying any of your needs, because it's like shooting at random and you're not sure how to satisfy your needs? So that could be two of those. A lot of people, Don Seeker says, a lot of people have mental health issues, often seek things outside themselves as a replacement for being aware of and seeking self-fulfillment. As a replacement, that is a good emphasis, because you put as a replacement for being self-aware and mental health issues in one sentence. That kind of summarizes it. Thank you, Alpha Dog. Option number 2, Trement said. So that's what I was saying. I was reading a comment of Trement before. So basically, yes, there is this obstacle of where we are not sure what sort of needs we need to satisfy and how to go about satisfying our needs. So we basically start shooting at random, and we start participating in many different activities, but there is no fulfillment or no no satisfaction and all that. So I think that's a super big obstacle. And you can see here how it will affect your self-esteem, because if you're not meeting your needs, if all you experience is lack of satisfaction, emptiness, numbness, and there's nothing going on because your needs are unfulfilled, you're not going to be feeling very good about yourself, right? So it's like there is something within us that pushes us to satisfy our needs, right? It could be self-preservation instinct, whatever you want to call it. Something that wants us to take care of ourselves. And if we don't do that, we're going to feel awful about ourselves. We're going to feel self-disgust. We're going to feel insecure. We're going to feel like everything is worthless. Dominic asks, does understanding one's needs require self-awareness? It's difficult to attain satisfaction of those needs if we don't know what they are or how to reach that fulfillment. Right, exactly. So like I was saying just on the beginning when I started talking about the self-care concept, we need to have sufficient self-understanding to know what we need, right? So as I was explaining, there are several different types of needs, and I think that Maslow pyramid of need or hierarchy of need, however you want to call it, I think it's a very good starting point in understanding our needs. And also a very old theory, but it's still, it's still valid in psychology. It still provides us with this kind of overarching guidance on what we need in life, right? What do healthy people need in life, right? And it's not just about the path of growth and development, but it helps us to develop this self-understanding and self-awareness, right? So until we develop this self-awareness, which is a state of, recognizing, okay, I'm having an impulse towards going for a walk, let's say, right? I'm having an impulse, something is driving me towards having a specific kind of food, right? This is super important too. Or I'm having an impulse, feel kind of motivated to call a friend, right? All these little drives and impulses are telling us what we need, right? We have all this, all this information is within us. We just need to tune into this process. But until we are able to do it, right? I know some people struggle. Some people have never had the opportunity to learn about these processes, right? Right? Especially if your childhood wasn't very right and your parents didn't know how to take care of themselves. It's not going to be very easy for you to know as a child how to take care of yourself. So as an adult, you have this opportunity. You're super lucky to have psychology. You have super lucky to have other people interested in this subject. So as someone who struggles with the self-awareness, with knowing what your feelings are telling you, or what your emotions are telling, or what your motivations are telling you, until you have that, that's super helpful to have all these different psychological theories about needs. And I think self-determination theory could be also helpful. It's a theory of human motivation. It's a little bit simpler than Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the pyramid of needs, but it also can help you to understand how your motivation arises and why it arises in the first place. And it talks a little bit about needs. And if I remember right, there are only 3 needs in that theory, which is relatedness, accomplishment, and there was one more, self-efficacy maybe, competence, something like that. Yeah, sorry, I forgot. It's only 3 needs. So as I'm saying, as a starting point for someone who might be struggling with that self-awareness, I think it's super useful to consider these theories at first and maybe develop a checklist. Maybe periodically ask yourself how you're doing in terms of certain needs, right? Yeah, my parents had no idea how to take care of themselves. Right. So that's really sad. And I think many people are like this. Many parents are like this. So speaking of needs, the other half of this process, which is also super important, I think, and I think many people might be struggling with it, thank you, Alex, is having this ability to actually acknowledge that we have achieved something, that we satisfied our needs, that we satisfied some drive that we've been having, or motivation that we've been having. So I think very often what might be happening, it's something very common in Gestalt therapy, something that this sort of therapists address, is when we're having actual resistance to feeling fulfilled or satisfied. So what happens is that we do everything right in our lives, let's say, right? We satisfy most of our needs, right? So technically we should be the happiest person, people or person, whatever, in the world. But what happens is that nothing ever brings us fulfillment. So we can, you see here this relationship again with self-care and self-esteem, right? Someone with self-esteem will experience basically similar symptoms to someone who is either unable to satisfy their needs or someone who is unable to acknowledge that they are satisfied. So again, in this scenario of someone who lacks this ability of getting satisfied or acknowledging their achievements, what sort of feelings do you think they're going to experience? It's usually something like shame or emptiness, numbness, something related to lacking something in our life. Maybe some lack of meaning or lack of purpose, or everything might seem pointless, right? Because you're doing everything right. So what prevents you from acknowledging even simple things? And actually, on a personal note, I think it's a disorder of a modern humanity. It's an absolute disaster because we got super comfortable. We have everything we want, right? And I'm talking about, an average person in the West, right? We have anything we want. We have food delivery. We have Uber. We can go wherever we go, right? There is no striving anymore. So in this kind of situations, I think an average person, or most of us maybe even, we learn to be entitled in a sense, learn to depend on our environment. We got super comfortable in the process. So what happens is that we'll not experience as much satisfaction as we could, because we are not appreciating the little things we are having in our lives. We are not appreciating the fact that our needs are satisfied, that we can strive towards higher needs, that we can strive towards creativity or self-actualization or self-transcendence, right? Because we, in a sense, we lost maybe in a way, we lost that sensitivity towards little things, appreciating the little things. So again, it's hard to, feel worthy. It's hard to, have that good self-esteem in such situation because you're not striving towards anything, because there's not enough challenge and you got comfortable. So that's just my kind of personal perspective. Honesty with yourself and others also helps. Yeah, exactly. So knowing your needs, being super honest with yourself, obviously is very important, because if you're not honest, how else will you know what's wrong in your life or what needs fixing, right? Yeah, maybe we need struggle. I have food delivered from Whole Foods, my PS4 work from home, multiple cars, and yet I'm not happy at all. Yeah. We are dissociated from our pain and truth about ourselves. So much for the Western society. That's why Stoicism is the way. I don't know if that's a way. If it's the way for you, I'm really happy for you. So before we move to the last section, so the last section, I was actually planning to cover this last bit on self-esteem, which is about confidence and self-efficacy. So this is like, this last step, in my opinion, is after you have sufficient self-awareness, after you are able to derive that satisfaction from meeting your needs, and you take care of all your needs as much as you can, right? So basically we are all doing what we can. And I think it's important to have this inner compass or inner standards for ourselves, what is right for us. So it's not so much about other people, how other people evaluate us, or what their values are, but it's about developing our own values depending on what our needs are. So if my need is to sleep 10 hours per night, but the society tells me that it's not right, that I should be sleeping 6 hours a night, right? Even though sleeping 6 hours a night makes me super tired, I'm gonna go along with 10 hours because it makes me feel good, it's right for my health, and so I start valuing it, and I start developing schedule around this time of going to bed. So this is just an example, but you see here, we develop these values based on what we need, what is right for us, what is good, right? What makes us satisfied, what makes us fulfilled and happy, right? And comfortable. Maybe not comfortable. That wasn't a good example based on what I just said about the laziness in the Western world. But peaceful. I think, yeah, peaceful would be a better word. So listening to ourselves, being honest with ourselves. But the last bit I wanted to talk about today is in regards to what I was saying, in regards to confidence, feeling secure, having the sense of self-efficacy so we can do it. So it actually, I thought it would be helpful to take care of our needs first, but I can see here that actually confidence and self-efficacy would be helpful in meeting our needs as well. So it's like maybe developing both could be actually helpful. So based on what we're talking about today, my question to you would be, what sort of obstacles are you facing in regards to your confidence? Why can't you be more confident? What prevents you, or what stops you from being more confident? And we'll go from there. Let me read some comments. I think some feel guilty about acknowledging their achievements. Some despise the concept of self-praise, holding any amount of self-praise is equivalent to narcissistic level of self-praise. Right, I'm wondering if what I just wrote was from Dominic. I wonder if it's related to maybe imposter syndrome. So imposter syndrome is where whatever we do is never good enough, right? So we don't acknowledge our achievements, we don't acknowledge our accomplishments or our skills because X, Y, and Z. So we might have a belief that it's narcissistic, we might have a belief that it doesn't matter anymore, or we might have a belief that it's not really valid. So that's the other kind of extreme or obstacle to actually having that self-esteem. So we're gonna address it in that bit on confidence and security. So what sort of obstacles you guys facing in regards to being more confident or having this feeling of self-efficacy that tells you that yes, I can accomplish things and what I'm doing is right in life, and we'll go from there. What about self-belief? Self-belief. It's so self-belief. That's why I broke the self-esteem concept down, because self-belief is very broad. But if I understand you right, perhaps your perhaps you mean the self-efficacy. So self-belief is believing that we can achieve certain things. So that's self-efficacy, which I'm just going to talk about. Okay, so we start getting some comments about what sort of things might prevent you from being more confident. Bullied at school and now I'm losing my hair. That sucks. Yeah, I think bullying is a big one, even, regardless if it's in childhood or in adulthood, because it destroys our self-efficacy. So we eventually start to believe that we cannot do anything. We cannot do anything to defend ourselves, or we simply internalize the way bullies treat us in a way, and we assume it as that's the way we are. No blueprint. For example, role models, guidance. Right, so that kind of links to childhood again. So we have this theme of our past kind of ruining our future in a sense, which sucks. But yeah, having good role models, whether it's in childhood or in adulthood, having no models like this, it might be difficult for us to understand how we could be, or what our potential is, in a sense, or that it's okay to be a certain way, especially for the child. Like, as an adult, you don't need external validation or approval, right? We are more than this. But for a child, you need that external validation and approval. You need someone to tell you that it's okay to be that way, right? And encourage your potential. So I think it's good to be aware of this, because then as an adult you have a choice, and you can have this awareness that I actually have more control now, right? So you don't need other people to give you permission or to show you how you could develop. Not enough self-integrity, which leads to fear of failure, mistake. Right, fear, I think fear of failures generally, I think it could be a very big obstacle towards not only having the sense of self-efficacy or confidence, but also, most importantly, I think it might stop us from achieving certain things and actually taking an action in our lives, because we fear of what's going to happen. So based on all this answers that we're getting, we have some relationship with the past perhaps, and we have the fear of failure, and perhaps not having good role models or not enough kind of approval or encouragement in our lives to develop the way we want or to do things that we need. But I think that generally confidence or self-efficacy or feeling secure in terms of doing what we need to do comes down to having realistic standards. So if we shoot too high, if we have super high standards, right, we're gonna get into very uncomfortable situations where we fail, or where we do something wrong, or when it's so difficult for us that we're going to get discouraged. So our confidence and self-esteem and self-efficacy is going to go down. On the other hand, if our standards are too low, there's not going to be enough challenge, so you won't see any progress in life. You won't see any results from your actions. So you might be, striving towards something, or building new habits, or maybe creating something in your life. But if it's too easy, you're not going to be really seeing any progress or any results. So then what's the point, right? kind of refers again to this feeling of emptiness, or feeling like things are pointless in our life in a sense. So I think developing this realistic standards for what we can achieve, but also being open enough to take risks. So we need to be able to step outside of our comfort zone continuously, a little bit, and a little bit. Not taking some major leap, although you might want to do it. If you're confident enough, you might want to do it. But if you're confident enough, you wouldn't be here, right? So it's all about having this realistic standard. So who you are as a person, right? What your values are. And values are again, as I was saying in the previous section, values are based on what matters to you, what makes you feel good, right? What makes you feel healthy, what makes you feel happy, what makes you feel satisfied, right? So obviously you want to make more of the same in your life. You want to make more happiness. You want to make more health, right? You don't want to make less health. Why would you want to do that for? So confidence and setting goals for yourself, I think, should be aligned with these basic values and striving towards feeling good, right? And being healthy. But in order to do that, you need to have this sense of self-efficacy. So self-efficacy is basically created by this feedback loop you are getting from the environment. So you're taking an action, you're seeing the results, and you acknowledge the results. And then you repeat the action until you feel confident enough in that action. If your standards are too high, you're gonna be discouraged. If you never spoke Spanish and you want to speak Spanish tomorrow, right? And obviously you're not gonna learn Spanish by tomorrow. You're gonna feel like like a failure. You're gonna feel discouraged or sad or whatever feeling. So that was just a silly example, but if your standards are too high, you're not gonna really develop that self-efficacy because it's too unrealistic. If it's too low, you're gonna get bored, right? If you know that you're pretty good at maths, for example, right? But you're not studying for the exam, right? Which you have next month, because you think it's too easy, right? Then obviously you're probably gonna fail that exam because it's too boring, it's not too challenging. But for example, if you made it a little bit more challenging for yourself, if that exam is for at your university or something like that, right? It's gonna be more interesting, it's gonna be more challenging. Or another example, if you're a really good runner, but then you race with kids, right? And you win that race, that's ridiculous, right? You're not really gonna get any good satisfaction from that achievement. So realistic standards is taking a good inventory of our skills, what we can really good do, and what can be really achievable in the external world. And you don't really need as much other people. It should be based on your own skills, because if you start comparing yourself to other people, that again can lead to this lower self-esteem, right? Like we need to understand that other people have different values because they have different needs, right? They might be having similar basic needs. Obviously they're humans, so they also need food and rest, but they might be more sophisticated in a sense. Each of us actually is more, very sophisticated, very individualistic in a sense, right? What one person can eat, it doesn't mean it's gonna make the other person feel good, right? We have food allergies and stuff like that. So setting our values for yourself independently of other people will help us with building that inner security. So it's more about making ourselves independent from the environment and choosing things that are right for us, not for other people. Even if it's if other people disapprove, I'm not sure if that really matters, because they don't know you, right? They don't know what you need in that moment. Thank you, Tremend. Thank you so much. Hope you're getting some value from this live stream. So creating this independence from other people's values, right? And then self-efficacy, striving more, kind of balancing on the border between having kind of well-developed skill, but also going slowly and slowly outside of our comfort zone and increasing that challenge, right? So that we can learn more and more about ourselves. Just to read some comments. I fear the rejection that might arise from being authentic. I can feel secure myself. I can secure my safety from behind a wall of. But then that's opposite of the authentic. And right, thank you for sharing, Alex. And I think that the brutal truth is that there's gonna be rejection. That's, I know it. I know it's maybe kind of late that I say that, but I think that the easiest way to overcome this kind of fears, like fear of failure or fear of rejection, is to simply acknowledge that this is what's gonna happen, right? That's it. There's gonna be rejection and there's gonna be failure. But the point is, as I was just talking about self-efficacy, is that as you are learning new skills, as you are growing as a person, you're stepping more and more outside of this comfort zone. So what happens is that as you build your self-efficacy, you are able to tolerate more and more, right? So for example, when you accept that there's going to be failure, that there's going to be rejection, and for example, start exposing yourself to situations where there might be rejection or failure. Let's say you start doing it once a month, right? You're kind of stepping outside of this comfort zone slowly. And then once you're confident enough, once you feel secure enough, right? Comfortable with that once per month event of exposure, you can increase it to twice a month, 3 times a month. And so you're slowly stepping outside of that comfort zone, right? Of that zone of that kind of keeps you in one place where you're not moving because you're scared of what is outside of it. And there are threats, right? There is rejection. Other people might be assholes to you. Other people might ridicule you or anything really. You might fail, right? You might start setting up new business and you're gonna fail, right? So all sort of things happen outside this comfort zone. But as you focus on yourself, on developing your values, on taking care of yourself, most importantly, right? On building this independence and self-reliance really in terms of your value and what matters to you in life. As you're doing it, you become more independent from other people. So you gather all that strength to slowly step outside of your zone more and more in a way, right? Damn, people are talking to each other in the chat and I don't know what to read anymore. All right. Getting confused. Okay, let's see. All right, so we have self-efficacy, confidence, and also I think it's kind of similar to what I was talking in regards to satisfying your needs, is that I also think that it's super important to acknowledge your success. I think very often we might be going through life developing different skills, being so successful, having different accomplishments, but we are not fully taking credit for that. So we might brush it off or push it outside of our awareness or simply ignore it. So what happens is that when we are not taking credit for our accomplishments, when we are not aware of how much we are achieving or where we're going or what sort of things changed in our lives, we're not gonna feel this development of self-efficacy or or confidence, simply because we don't know what the results of our actions are, right? And I don't mean the results in terms of, approval or validation of other people. That's very fragile, right? It's about, again, striving towards our own goals and our own values that we set for ourselves, which are based, again, on self-care and taking care of our needs. So the more we do that, the more confident we should be theoretically, in theory, right? But we need to be able to acknowledge what we are doing, right? What we've become successful with, what we become capable of, what we've achieved or accomplished in our lives. And it's not about bragging. It's not about feeling like we are super important in the world, or that we accomplished, we did something amazing, and we're looking for that validation and approval in the eyes of others. But it's about our own internal validation. So if I am able to set a goal for myself, for example, to read a book in a week, and I do it, I'm gonna be, happy for myself. Why not? What's wrong with that? The problem with narcissists in general is when it becomes external. So we want other people to validate what we are doing or what we are not doing. When we are acknowledging our accomplishments, when we are seeing the results, acknowledging the results of our actions, right? It's for ourselves. It's for taking kind of note of our progress. How else can we know that we've made a progress, for example, right? If we are not acknowledging what the results are. And it's not about, as I was saying, it's not about, kind of bragging or boosting our ego in a sense, but it's about taking stock of our actions. So how we are doing in terms of meeting our needs and living in accordance with our values. How we are doing in terms of taking care of ourselves, right? If I do something right for myself, I think I have a right to be happy about it. And again, it's not about this external validation. So all that process of self-reliance and striving towards our own values, it takes a lot of trust. So the more you do it, the more you learn how to listen to all these drives that you might be having, or what you need in that moment, right? Or what sort of values are the most important for you. The more you listen to this process, and the more you see the results of your actions and how they make you feel, or that they boost your health, right? Or that they bring you satisfaction, or that you're moving close into the life you have, the bigger your self-trust will be. And self-trust, I think, is it's very associated with that concept of self-esteem and self-efficacy, because if you trust yourself, if you know yourself, there is a guidance within you based on, the totality of who you are as a person, right? So what sort of emotional needs you might be having, or psychological needs. If you know that you can trust this guidance, and you see the right results from your actions, you're going to trust yourself more and more. So I will be taking questions if you have any, of course. If you don't, we can finish off earlier. But just to quickly summarize, so we know that to build self-esteem, we need self-care plus self-awareness. So we need to be aware of who we are as a person and what we need, right? How different needs manifest ourselves. For example, when you need to work out more, when your health is going down, for example, how will you know that you need to work out more, that you need to exercise more? So self-awareness and self-care. We need self-efficacy and confidence. So that kind of links to this idea of self-trust and trusting yourself and taking account of all the accomplishments, not just the big one, right? Of course, if you living by the standards of the society, you might have unrealistic expectations or unrealistic standards. So if that's the case, if you are struggling with satisfaction, then taking stock of your accomplishments, go back to earth and look at simple things and learn to appreciate simple things in your life. And you will see how easy it is to feel satisfied and to feel good about yourself. Thank you so much, AJ. So, lastly, on that list of building self-esteem is challenging ourselves to start stepping outside our comfort zone more and more. So, taking smaller steps, right? If something is too difficult, there's no reason for you to blame yourself or to feel like a failure, right? If you can't achieve something, if you're failing at something, that's just an information on the fact that maybe you miscalculated your steps. Maybe it's too difficult for you at the moment. So lower your standards a little bit, right? Instead of aiming to, for example, work for 5 hours, drop it down to 2.5 hours. What's wrong with that, right? And then build from there. As you notice that you are successful with that, you build in self-efficacy, confidence, self-esteem, of course, and then you can increase the challenge. So if you guys have any questions on this subject, on building self-esteem, or any other subject really, I'll be happy to stay a couple of minutes more. And just as a last reminder, for all of you guys who are on this live stream today, I offer 20% on my coaching sessions, all the packages as well. So all you need to do is just go to my website, mindmastery.com, go to coaching page, and there will be a calendar, and you can book an free introductory consultation with me just to kind of discuss if coaching is right for you. And then if you mention that you've been on this live stream today, which is about self-esteem and building self-esteem, I'll give you 20% discount. And also just a quick update about the group coaching. I will be announcing the dates of the first group coaching sessions probably tomorrow or Monday, early next week definitely. So what will happen is that I have about 3-4 places left if you're still interested in that. So what happens is that each coaching session will have 5 places, five spaces, and we're gonna work via Zoom. It's completely private, confidential, no recording, there's no pressure for you to participate. So it's just gonna be like this live streams, just more private, and obviously I will be able to offer more attention to every person. So 5 people per session, and for now it's going to be totally free. So if you'd like to sign up, there is a link to the group coaching page in the comment section. So please do that, because I don't have many spaces left. Okay, any questions? Let's see. Yes, you can't control others, and we need to allow them freedom, even if they are negative. Right, exactly. So recognizing our independence from other people in that process of developing standards for ourselves and our values, right? Other people have different values, different needs, right? Different standards, different expectations. It would be nice if they could keep it for themselves, but that's not always the case, right? So sometimes it spills over other people, and we feel rejected, or we feel judged or evaluated. It's difficult for me, Dominic says, it is difficult for me to recognize my accomplishments as praiseworthy. I have difficult associated value of praise to associate with a praiseworthy act. The result is flat response. So what's stopping you from recognizing your accomplishments as praiseworthy? What's stopping you from taking account into what you've accomplished? Is it not seeing them as worthy? That's what I kind of picked up from this message. Or is there something else? What would happen if you started seeing it as worthy? What sort of feelings would it bring up? Right? How would your life change? if you started recognizing these accomplishments as praiseworthy, right? And how would you feel if you started praising yourself for accomplishing certain things? Trement asks, what other languages do you speak? Just Polish and English, obviously, and tiny little bit of Spanish. Although I can't really, it takes me ages to make sentences in Spanish. So, but tiny little bit, like maybe 2%. Don Sika. Joanna, thanks for the discussion. Here's a topic for a whole live stream. Validation. Dependence, interdependence. Right, that is a good idea, validation. Yep, I'll take that into account. Thank you for sharing. I'm considering the group coaching. Is it okay to use a pseudonym for that? Yes, I mean, if you're comfortable with, if you prefer to be anonymous, to remain anonymous, yeah, you can use that. The only thing I would encourage is that, because it's going to be a small group, so we're going to be talking about private things, obviously, and people might not be very comfortable with someone who's in the background and they don't know who that person is. So I would encourage to use at least microphone at first, if you don't want to use a camera, just so that there is some sort of communication. It's not a requirement, it's just to make other people comfortable. Unless we're going to find a group of people that everyone wants to be completely anonymous, then that would be great. But again, for the beginning, I would say, yeah, stay anonymous if you prefer. You can use the pseudonym for that as well. That's totally fine, right? So it's really just an experiment for me, because it's a very new thing. I'm just starting up with group coaching. It's another huge thing for me. I'm really excited because it's like a little bit like this extension of this live streams. So I'd like to do more with that. Hence I'm starting with this group coaching. So yeah, it doesn't have to be a real name, but obviously, you know, there's gonna be some building connections with other people. That's the whole point. So we can build a group that wants to stay committed to certain goals, right? Wants to work on certain issues. They're probably gonna be a group of people that come to the same sessions every week. So I hope you guys can meet each other, and yeah, super exciting. Thank you for your kind words, Mamu. Woslow, not sure how to pronounce your name. How to handle not being able to practice getting out of your comfort zone during lockdown. So that is a kind of question of adaptability. So obviously we are really limited right now, but are there any things you could do in the situation that you are? So depending on what sort of skills you would like to build up, or what sort of challenge you would like to experience, I mean, internet offers lots of opportunities for that. So maybe start from this, right? So I mean, we all really depend on internet right now, which is kind of weird, because there's not much in real life going on right now. Thank you for that consideration. You're welcome, Dominic. Okay, good answer, thanks. Okay, guys, thank you so much again for joining me today. It's been real pleasure connecting with you. Again, if you're interested in group coaching, you can still sign up. I still have a few places left. And if you're interested in one-on-one coaching sessions with me, you can schedule your free consultation today on my website. If you go to mindmastery.com, go to the coaching page and schedule it on my calendar. And if you send me an email as well that you've been on this live stream today, I'll give you 20% discount. Thank you very much again, and I'll see you in the next live stream. Take care, bye. Bye.